So today I thought I'd talk a little bit about the dreaded wall, referring to marathon training, although some people might find a wall in half marathons. Generally, that wall occurs in marathons. It's typically somewhere between 18 and 22 miles, and it's just like, wah, 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 wah. There is nothing left. And people might be saying, well, hey, as you're recording this right now, it's early May. My marathon's not for months away. I don't need to worry about that yet. Well, if you already have a tried and true system for fueling, then you're right. You probably don't need to worry about it. You might, but you probably don't. But there's a whole lot of people who struggle with fueling. I'm lucky I'm not one of those, but there's a lot of people that get nauseous. They got to be very particular about what they have to take. So I'm going to try and give you some tips and tell you what's going on. I am not even pretending that I have all the answers to nauseousness. If I did, I could be like a bazillionaire because it's a pretty common issue. But generally when you hit the wall, it's because your body is out of fuel. Hopefully, you started on full, and somewhere between 18 and 22 miles, you hit almost empty. You're not actually empty. Your body is keeping some stuff in reserve. Think about the Olympic marathoner that crosses the finish line and collapses, and 3 minutes later, they've got their country's flag draped over their shoulders, and they're running around the track. Well, obviously, they're not totally about energy, but your body's saying, hey, we're kind of getting critically low here. I don't care about this running stuff anymore. Walk if you have to, not expending that kind of fuel. We're getting too close to empty. So what you want to do is try and keep the needle from getting there. And generally the only way you're going to do that is either to run really, really slow the entire race, which most people don't want to do, or you've got to make sure that you're taking some fuel during the race. So a little bit about how this works. Now, blood goes a lot of different places in your body, but the things you're concerned about right now is blood needs to go to your muscles. That's what's carrying oxygen, the carbon dioxide out, and fuel to the muscles. It goes to your skin. So when you sweat, blood is being shunted to your skin to help with that sweating process. It also goes to your stomach. That's what helps with digestion. So when you're running, the body is going to prioritize blood for the muscles and the skin over the stomach. You're going to want it to go to all of those, but it's going to say, hey, push comes to shove. Digestion is not that important. I've got to keep you cool, so we've got to sweat, and you're running hard, so I got to keep it going to the muscles. That's one of the reasons why typically the hotter the weather is, the more likely you are to get nauseous, because the more the body needs to send blood to your skin, and there's a finite amount of blood. There's only so much to go around, and it is going to other places as well, but it's going to prioritize digestion less and less and less because it's got to keep you cool and got to keep you running. So that's a little bit about what's going on. So knowing that, what do I do? Well, first of all, I realize that this is a little bit trainable. You can train your body to be more effective, but to do that, you've got to practice at that a lot. And so here are the things that have an impact. What you eat prior to your run or race has an impact. What you eat during has an impact. The effort you are at has an impact on it. There's a big difference between running at 10K pace and running at long run pace. The conditions have an impact. Obviously, like I just said, if it's hot, you're sending more blood to the skin. That has an impact on things. And the time of day matters. Your stomach is filled with gut bacteria, for want of a better phrase, and the type of gut bacteria you have in your stomach varies throughout the time of day, meaning you might have a tried and true system that works for you in morning marathons, but all of a sudden you're going to Las Vegas and running a night marathon. You might need to change a lot of the things that you do because your body is different at night than it is, so the time of day matters a little bit. But as I said, it's trainable, but in order to train and find out what works, you have to practice, practice, practice. And that's a big mistake a lot of people make in their marathon training if they don't already know what works for them, is they don't practice enough. They're afraid, well, if I'm doing too much with fuel, I'm not teaching my body to adapt to fat, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't care how well you are adapted to fat. If you don't figure out how to fuel during the marathon, you're most likely going to bonk between 18 and 22 miles because you will be burning carbs. You won't be just burning fat. You've got to be able to be good at that. So as much as possible, you need to simulate race day in your training as you figure out what works for me and what doesn't work for me. So the time of the race matters. Now, most of us train in the morning. Most of us race in the morning. And if you're training at 7 in the morning, your race is at 8, I think that's really all about the same. But let's say you're doing the New York Marathon, and let's say you do your long runs at 5 in the morning and the marathon's at 11. That's a pretty big difference. So to the extent you can, you'd want to get some practice, doing some of that running at race time if you're trying to figure this out. You also want to train some at goal pace effort. So as I said before, when the blood is going places, the harder your muscles are working, which means the faster you're running, the more they're working, the more blood has to go to those muscles, the less you have available for digestion. So there's a big difference between how you might digest your fuel at a long run pace of, say, 10:30 a mile and a marathon pace of, say, 9. So you want to get some of that practice running races. That's not always going to be able to be done during a long run, but ideally it's a longer type run. So you're, again, as close as possible simulating race day. And to the extent you can, you want to simulate race conditions. I know that one's really tough to do, but if the race you're going to be running tends to be warm and humid, you want to get some of that practice in warm and humid. Again, unless you've already figured out what to do. But if you haven't, then you got to try and replicate that to the extent that you can. Now, this can take weeks or months to figure out. So let's say you get a run in at 8 in the morning, that's what time your race is, and you're getting some goal pace effort, and you think the weather is similar to what it's likely to be on rest day, and you tried On Your Mark gel, and it worked great. You didn't feel nauseous. Well, I wouldn't make one time it. You want to try and do that a few times to make sure that works for you. And it's not just what you take in during, again, it's what you ate before. So you want to try and say, what would I eat the day of the race? Can I eat that? Can I eat it 2 hours before, an hour before, whatever it's going to be during race day? But you need to practice, and it can take a long time. Hence this video now, because if you don't have the answers to that for yourself, you want to start working on that now so that long before race day, you have a pretty good idea of what you need to do. Now, here's just a few miscellaneous tips. Whatever you eat before your race and what you use for fuel, you don't have to use gels. You can eat anything. It should be easily digestible, and it should be primarily simple sugars. You can have jelly beans if you want. Now, I wouldn't want to chew on them, but that's just all sugar. It's easily digestible. You don't want a lot of fat or protein or fiber because that's harder to digest. So you want something for your meal before, as well as whatever you choose for fuel in your race that is easily digestible. I suggest front loading. I try and take more fuel in earlier. Why? The longer you're running, the warmer you're going to be, the more your body's going to send blood to the skin, less for digestion. So I want to try and front load. I'm going to fuel often and early to try and get my calories in a little bit early. You need to practice that. Most gels, if you're taking a gel, need water. Now, you don't have to take the water at the very instant you take a gel. What I do if I'm using gels, if I see a water station coming up, I might take my gel now and then 2 or 3 minutes later I'm at the water station and take it then, or the reverse. I might get the water then and then grab my gel right after the water station. But gels are essentially dehydrated carbohydrate. They need that water to make it soluble, to make it digestible. And if you don't take the water, and by the way, it's water, not Gatorade, that will tend to overload you with too much sugar at the same time. But you need that water to help make it digestible, or it just sits in your stomach, and that's going to make you nauseous. So again, I think the big headline here is it's really practice. If you have something that's tried and true for you, your race is at a time you're familiar with, you know what to do, then great. You probably don't need much practice. But if you're trying to figure out, then the time to start practicing is now, so you have an idea by race day what's going to work for you.